Thanks for joining us on this latest webisode of All Politics Are Local. I'm WSAV digital reporter John Dowding. Every week we break down news coming from Washington, D.C. to understand how it affects us right here in the Coastal Empire and Low Country. Let's get started. Over the weekend, the House passed an emergency coronavirus relief package. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced a deal with the Trump administration for the aid package from Congress. It's meant to provide direct relief to Americans, including free testing, 2 weeks of sick pay for workers, enhanced unemployment benefits, and bolstered food programs. Now, joining us live from Washington, D.C. to discuss the latest developments of COVID-19 is WSAV Washington Bureau Correspondent Kellie Meyer. Thank you for joining us this morning, Kellie.
Of course, John. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, so let's get started right off the bat. What are some of our local officials saying about these ever-changing developments with COVID-19?
Well, we caught up with a few of them last week, just as they were getting ready to pass this bill, as they were hoping, and some were maybe hoping that they stayed a bit longer to work on this a bit more. Republicans and Democrats were divided. As you saw, they introduced something on Wednesday night, and then they kind of worked through it on Thursday, and then again on Friday, up until late Friday night into early Saturday morning when, like you said, they actually got this through. But the Senate wasn't here to then pick it up, so they are planning to pick that up here starting later tonight. But we did catch up with some of the lawmakers from our area. Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
I think the most important thing for folks to know back in the Low Country is that everyone up here is working together. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, working together with the president to address this coronavirus. A large chunk of that $8.3 billion will go to R&D to hopefully find a cure and get that cure to market.
We know this is a fast-moving virus. We know that it's a fast-spreading virus, but at the same time, we've done a great job of curtailing it thus far here in the United States.
And overall, like you heard, both Democrats and Republicans wanted to do something for the American people to fight this coronavirus and to help businesses that are impacted. But how they got together on that package, that's where they were kind of not meeting in the middle. But like you saw, they eventually did early Saturday morning. And again, we're going to pick this up here as we head into this new week.
Well, I mean, what are this new bill that the House worked on with the advice and guidance of the Trump administration, which is expected to pass in the Senate later on this week. What is included in that bill, and what does that mean for us here in Georgia?
Yeah, so it's a great question, John. We're looking at free coronavirus testing, even for the uninsured. We're looking at paid sick leave for workers. However, that only applies to businesses with fewer than 500 employees. We're looking at nutrition assistance, $1 billion for food security programs, those that rely on SNAP and food banks. Also strengthening unemployment insurance benefits. That's what we're looking at in this package. And we heard Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin over the weekend on some of the Sunday morning shows that this is just basically chapter one. They may have to revisit some different issues. They may have to look at some other areas where that might need help through this coronavirus pandemic that we're seeing. So this really is their part one of how Congress can help people in this situation.
So did any of the either administration officials or our local representatives on Capitol Hill, did they have any specific timeline as to when we can see more testing coming to our area in smaller areas across the country, or is that still kind of being hashed out as well?
Yeah, and that's another great question, John. We're looking at cities in Washington, Colorado, New York, Texas, Connecticut. They've all opened drive-through stations to test more people for coronavirus. The administration said Friday they're looking to open up more of those stations, but like you said, we don't know where and when. Testing capacity has been limited in the U.S. as we saw some delays on the rollout and the development of these tests and the ability to have the laboratories be able to check them. But like you said, we're waiting to see if they'll open in other communities like in Georgia, but we don't know just yet.
Yeah, there's a lot that's up in the air with, like you said, with all these free testing, and when we'll be able to feel the benefits of that new bill once it gets passed in the Senate and then heads to the president's desk. So we'll just have to keep an eye for those latest developments. And anybody watching live, just stick with News 3 on air and online for the very latest. We're going to move on to a bunch of different postponements and changes that have been going on in the last couple weeks. For example, right here in Georgia, the March 24th Georgia presidential primary was also postponed postponed due to COVID-19 concerns. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger made the decision to stop all in-person voting. Raffensperger added all votes already cast, including absentee ballots, will be counted. For those who did not vote, they'll still have a chance to vote in the general primary on May 19th. Now, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said, quote, "Events are moving rapidly and my highest priority is protecting the health of our poll workers and the community at large," unquote. Now, we just had another debate over the weekend, now with the top two contenders, former Vice President Joe Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. So obviously, we're still in the electoral cycle. This is an election year. So, Kellie, how will these postponements of different primaries, which are going on across the country, how is this going to delay changing the electoral timeline?
I talked with some lawmakers about this last week, especially looking at Florida. So we have Ohio, Arizona, Florida, and Illinois going to the polls tomorrow. That looks like that's set to happen. It's already in motion. When I talk with lawmakers specifically from Florida and the Florida delegation, both Republicans and Democrats, they don't see it affecting the turnout too much. People can, at that time when I talked to them last week, people could mail in their ballot and send that in without having to go in person. But you can only imagine with, maybe some of the elderly population not wanting to go out to those polls, and also with the new CDC guidelines as of Sunday night saying that no more gatherings of 50 or more. So you wonder how this will affect turnout and people going to the polls on Tuesday. But as far as going forward from there, New York is considering delaying their presidential primary from April 28th to June 23rd. Like you said, Louisiana and Georgia have already postponed their primaries. Other states are weighing this option. Puerto Rico said they would postpone from March 29th to April 26th. And just seeing how this impacts down the road, it's really interesting to see. And we just don't know the implications of this just yet.
So obviously a bunch of different states. I feel like from what we're hearing over the last couple days, over the weekend, states are all just kind of weighing their options about what works best for them. You're talking about how in Florida, the elderly population there is maybe too afraid to just go out. So I feel like states are either in between just postponing it altogether, or have you heard of or seen of any states that are specifically focusing in on doing mail-in ballots or absentee ballots as opposed to in-person voting?
They are definitely discussing that. They're weighing either delays or mail-in balloting measures to protect the public, but nothing officially has been decided. All we've been seeing is some states delaying their primaries has been the biggest measure we've been seeing taken. But as far as mail-in balloting, that could be something you see as well down the road. But it's such a fast-moving and things change, like we were discussing here before we started. So much has changed just in the last few days, so it's really hard to predict with something like this.
So obviously one of the biggest of the two biggest events going on before obviously the November election will be both parties' political conventions that are going on this summer. The Democrats, they're going to be in Milwaukee, I believe, Kellie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they'll be in Milwaukee.
Yes, Democrats in Milwaukee, yeah.
And then Republicans will be in Charlotte, correct?
Yes.
So obviously those are in July and August, months ahead, and hopefully by then the coronavirus will just be a nightmare that we all had to live. So have any representatives from either major party anticipated any delays in their national conferences over the summer? Because that is a big no-no when it comes to CDC concerns. You have thousands of people gathering in a small area in a specific city to select the candidates from each party. So are there any potential delays for national conferences as well?
And that's a really interesting point to bring up. We have the DNC and RNC, like you said, coming up this summer. And again, it's so far out. We don't know exactly what can happen. And like you said, we hope that this is a thing of the past by then, but we just don't know. But what impact we could see from what decisions they make now to how it impacts the conventions is something like we're seeing with the delay in New York. So say they're delaying that to June 23rd. That actually violates the rules of the Democratic National Committee, requiring that all states hold their primaries by June 9th. But then the DNC did say that they will continue to work with every state party as they adjust their delegate selection plans around the coronavirus. So it's incredible to see the impact this coronavirus is having on our selection process for President of the United States as we head into this 2020 year and near November. So you're going to see the RNC and DNC really reevaluate their own rules and adjust them to how they see fit.
Well, hopefully they're going to have to change their rules and adjust their rules, but hopefully they won't have to postpone their conventions for this summer. But thank you so much, Kellie, for sitting down and speaking with us and helping us kind of sort through all the fear and the facts as we deal with this crisis and helping us better understand all the news coming from Capitol Hill.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. Thank you. And News 3 is your local election headquarters. You make sure to stick with News 3 on air and online for the very latest. You can see more stories from Kellie on our website. Just head over to wsav.com/Washington. And thank you for watching this latest webisode of All Politics Are Local. I'm John Dowding. We'll see you again next week.